comes the Morrissey Tau. It accelerates faster from 0 to 60 than a Saab 900 GLS.
6 months ago, coming out with a car the size and price of the Gremlin.
13 Mercuries in a torture tent.
Automobile brands like Ford and GM Motors have existed for centuries, which is pretty impressive. However, there are great vehicle brands that have long ceased to exist due to financial problems and acquisition. These brands are now nostalgic recollections of the past and live on only in our memories. Here are some car brands that are no longer around.
The new 62 Lark Daytona from Studebaker.
Studebaker's a name you likely never hear anymore in the automobile industry. This relic of a car brand dates back as far as 1852, when it was established by brothers who owned a blacksmith shop. At that time, the company manufactured horse carriages, but as time went on, the brothers switched to the production of cars. Studebaker had faced one major disadvantage. They struggled to maintain profitability because of their high production cost. Other big names like Chrysler, Ford, and General Motors were able to mass-produce vehicles at a lower price because of their high production volume, and this allowed these brands to sell at much cheaper rates than the poorly financed Studebaker. Studebaker had tried to merge with Packard in the 1950s, but inconsistencies in management and a lack of synergy had made it impossible. The brand also struggled with creativity. Besides the Avanti and the Lark, the other models were bland and less desirable than other supercars being released by other manufacturers at the time. The decline in sales as well as outdated product lines ultimately led to the decision to stop production in 1966, marking the ending of America's oldest car brand.
The new Packard V8 engine delivers more driving force to the rear wheels than any other engine.
The Packard automobile brand released its last model in 1958. It was known for manufacturing classy and luxurious expensive vehicles. However, it had failed to modernize its designs, sticking to old models which no longer appealed to buyers. European luxury car companies like Mercedes-Benz entered the American market and eroded Packard's market shares with a new kind of luxury and performance vehicle. With a failed merger attempt with Studebaker in 1954, the Packard brand realized it was better off financially on its own, then merged with an equally struggling Studebaker. The car brand finally decided to shut down in 1958 due to financial difficulties.
This American Motors Concorde and this Spirit are built to be more than just good-looking. They're tough.
American Motors Corporation, or AMC, was introduced in the automotive industry in 1954 as the result of a merger between two car manufacturing companies. It was led by George Romney, father to presidential candidate Mitt Romney, and was a relatively small automaker that struggled financially, not to mention competition with top brands like Ford and Chrysler. AMC's most unique models were the Pacer, Gremlin, and Jeep, none of which were profitable in the long term. The brand made a couple of business moves like the acquisition of Jeep from Kaiser Motors in 1970, which was a successful initiative, but the failure to diversify made the brand redundant. The final nail in the coffin for the AMC brand was its attempts at a partnership. In the 1980s, Renault bought major stakes in AMC to provide financial support, but after a few creative differences, they sold their shares to Chrysler, who were only interested in the Jeep line, and therefore pushed to scrap all non-Jeep vehicles in AMC. The takeover by Chrysler led to the ending of AMC as a brand, and it stopped production in 1988 thanks to its brand new owners. A former General Motors engineer by the name of John DeLorean started the DeLorean Motor Company in 1975, and the brand quickly made it to the big screen, featured in the movie franchise Back to the Future. The DMC-12 was not only the most prominent model of the brand, it was also the only model that was ever made. It came with gull-wing doors that swung upwards, a design that was way ahead of its time. But economic recession in the early 80s made the luxury vehicle too exorbitant, leading to poor sales. After DeLorean's arrest in 1982 for an alleged drug trafficking charge, and his release after being cleared of those charges, the brand's reputation was dented, leading to the loss of investors and suppliers. The success of the brand would be short-lived, as it filed for bankruptcy in 1982 and had to discontinue. Even though the CEO passed away in 2005, the brand was relaunched in recent years, but due to design flaws, the cars are bound in the factories. As of now, there are rumors that we may see the DeLorean brand of cars in 2024.
Pontiac Fiero, America's first mid-engine production car.
Pontiac is one of the most unforgettable vehicle brands, launched in 1926 and owned by General Motors. Pontiac owned some masterpieces in its time, like the Grand Prix, the GTO, Firebird, and Grand Am. GM had decided to discontinue production of Pontiac cars in 2010 based on the financial crisis and bankruptcy. In 2008, the global financial crisis was heavy on automobile industries, and GM was losing massively. General Motors had filed for bankruptcy in 2009 and was mandated by the government to restructure and streamline operations, focusing on the brands that were still profitable. Pontiac was already facing rough times due to the shift in customer preference to fuel-efficient and environmentally friendly vehicles, and this led to the discontinuation of the brand, while GM had focused on more brands like Chevrolet, Buick, GMC, and Cadillac.
At Saturn, we knew this. Where and how, though, is anyone's guess.
Saturn Corporation emerged as a subsidiary of General Motors in 1985, and its models were quite unique. They immediately got the attention of customers. The Saturn's exterior was made of plastic and would pop back out to its normal place whenever there was a collision. This meant that owners wouldn't need to spend a fortune on repairs. The Saturn had a few models that sold massively, like the Sky Roadster and the Ion sedan, and they were quite durable, performing exceptionally well. But General Motors shut down production in 2010 due to bankruptcy, which pretty much led to the dissolution of many other vehicle brands under the GM logo.
But this one is something special, the 1981 Delta 88.
Oldsmobile may be one of the oldest vehicle brands ever known in the history of manufacturing. The brand first hit the spotlight in 1897, and GM acquired the brand in 1908 and proceeded to make unforgettable masterpieces like the Rocket V8. Oldsmobile didn't only face external competition, it also faced internal, with GM's extensive lineup of solid brands like the Buick, Cadillac, Chevrolet, and more. Oldsmobile had problems standing out of the sea of colossal brands, and even their Bravada SUV, one of the best in its lineup, just wasn't enough to keep the brand afloat. Therefore, due to a lack of profitability, GM stopped production of Oldsmobile in 2004.
Cougar, it's the meanest, most masculine road animal yet.
In 1938, Ford Motors launched the Mercury brand with notable models like the Sable, Cougar, and Capri. Sales steadily declined and only accounted for a small fraction of Ford's profits. By the year 2000, Mercury models had become redundant, as many of them were a version of other Ford vehicles with minor differences. It only confused consumers and made them tilt towards other brands that were more known and trusted. And since the car wasn't selling, investing further in Mercury models became a bit of a problem. And to make matters worse, it was more of a North American brand and didn't have any international recognition compared to other brands in the portfolio. In 2010, Mercury would be discontinued.
Now it's up to you.
The 1969 Sport Suburban Wagon by Plymouth.
Plymouth was a car brand under the Chrysler Corporation and formed by Walter P. Chrysler in 1928. It focused on designing low-cost alternatives to massively popular and expensive brands of the era, and by the 1990s, it witnessed a drastic decline in sales that struggled to differentiate itself from other brands. Plymouth at the time was only strategically positioned as an affordable no-frills brand and had some difficulties adapting to market shifts. Everything changed in 2001 when the brand stopped production and passed all of its previous designs to top brands like Chrysler and Dodge. Chrysler decided to focus more on the core, which had stronger market shares, since some of the highest-selling models like the Neon were also offered by Dodge, therefore making Plymouth redundant.
This is Eagle Premier. European styling, aerodynamically it rivals the world's finest sedans.
The Eagle brand was created as a subsidiary of Chrysler in 1987, the same year they acquired AMC. The Eagle had struggled to find its identity because many of its models seemed like rebadged versions of other brands like Renault and Mitsubishi, not to mention it also had a small product line that included Talon, Vision, and Summit. Its lineup was confusing to consumers as its designs overlapped with Chrysler, Dodge, and Plymouth, only with much lower sales. Chrysler began investing less in the Eagle brand to streamline its output to only high-selling products. The Vision model was the last one to be discontinued in 1997, and Chrysler officially discontinued Eagle in 1998. The Saab brand started out designing Swedish luxury vehicles in the 40s after the introduction into the automotive scene in 1945. It was later acquired by General Motors in hopes of reviving the brand and upgrading designs to appeal to the general public, but sales remained at an all-time low. This, combined with the financial crisis, affected GM as a brand, and certain brands under GM had to be cut. Therefore, they stopped production in 2011. The Saab brand was then traded to a new Swedish owner in 2013 and decided to follow trends by dipping its toes into the production of electric vehicles. This innovation would be short-lived because it only lasted a year, and it faced intense competition from major luxury vehicle brands like Audi, Volvo, and BMW, which had already owned huge market shares because of their strong identities and financial backing. In 2014, the brand was finally shut down, being unable to compete in the modern market. The Hummer was introduced into the automotive world in 1992 and first belonged to the parent company AM General. The Hummer was mass-produced to meet market demands. There were various versions like the Humvee, designed for military purposes. The brand, though notorious for its low fuel efficiency, had soon become synonymous with style, luxury, and power, as it was favored by celebrities and the affluent. GM had purchased the Hummer brand in '99 to add to its collection. However, customers increasingly turned away from the large gas-guzzling SUVs in favor of more fuel-efficient cars. When GM was hit by financial issues, it would be forced to file for bankruptcy and discontinue certain brands that were not at the top of its list in profits. And sadly, the Hummer was discontinued in 2010. In 2022, GMC decided to bring it back with an electric version that dropped in the same year. Toyota Motor Corporation launched the Scion car brand in 2003 and began churning out models that would hopefully appeal to a younger demographic. The Sport Scion TC and the Compact XB had gained momentum, but the market was extremely competitive and Scion models never made enough sales to stay in business. Toyota had decided to streamline operations and they cut investments in Scion in 2016.
Introducing Daihatsu for 1990. Now available at your local Daihatsu dealer. The economical three-door hatchback.
The Daihatsu automobile brand was founded in 1907 in Japan and designed as a kei car, a category of very small cars which were comfortable and compact. It was well known for producing fuel-efficient vehicles, initially beginning with small three-wheel trucks and later changing to production cars. The brand went international in the 20th century, and in the 60s Toyota acquired shares increasingly until Daihatsu became a subsidiary of Toyota in 2016. Due to declining sales in Europe, Daihatsu decided to leave the highly competitive market and focus on domestic and emerging markets in Japan. Fortunately, kei cars were a big deal in Japan, and the brand continued to thrive. You may not find one in the US and parts of Europe, but you can be sure they still exist in the local market and continue to make an impact in affordable kei cars for public use.
The 90s begin with the new Geo Prism, the quality sedan with 16-valve performance. Prism is designed for years of carefree driving.
General Motors introduced Geo in 1989 as a subdivision focused on the manufacturing of small and fuel-efficient vehicles to match the rising need for affordable and portable cars. Geo was designed to compete with a large influx of Japanese cars in the US market, and in the 80s and 90s the brand was successful. Models like the Prism, the Metro, and more closely mirrored the Toyota Corolla and the Suzuki Swift. The Tracker was a close alternative to the Sidekick, and the Geostorm was an upgrade of the Isuzu Impulse. The compact vehicle brand enjoyed massive sales in the 90s because of its budget-friendly options, but by the mid-90s, competition for small and affordable cars went through the roof, and consumers began to shift preferences towards larger vehicles. Sales declined, and in 1997, GM decided to discontinue the brand as part of its management strategy. Geo models were rebranded under Chevy, and even the Geo Prism became the Chevrolet Prism. The Yugo brand was manufactured by Zastava Automobiles, a Yugoslavian company, and were introduced into the U.S. market in the 1980s as one of the cheapest compact cars ever made. The outrageously low price caught the attention of consumers, but time with the brand became infamous for producing some of the worst, poorly designed, and unreliable cars in the market. When Yugo arrived in 1985, first-time owners were ecstatic to find a good-looking, simple, and no-frills vehicle as a budget-friendly option, but soon enough it began to develop a bad reputation because of the poor quality of parts and other issues like engine problems, rust, electrical faults, and a lack of safety features. The brand was subjected to negative media coverage and customer backlash, and sales plummeted to almost nothing at all. Combined with international sanctions that further crippled production, it was discontinued in 2008 and unable to redeem its reputation as one of the worst cars ever made.
If you're thinking of buying a Triumph TR6 but would like to road test it, please control yourself. Don't test its fully independent suspension this way.
Triumph began as a British high-performance vehicle with renowned sporty and stylish models like the TR6. It was a brand that upheld the style of British culture, quickly becoming an icon in the automotive industry. With up to 30,000 cars under the brand, Triumph had an annual worth of $1.58 billion, but as time went on, it began to face many challenges, ranging from financial issues, evolving customer needs, the oil crisis, and stringent automotive safety. Environmental regulations in the 1970s had also contributed to the challenges, and British Leyland, the parent company to Triumph, battled with quality control and other problems, which had affected overall operations and reputation. Triumph had faced both internal and external competition, as well as lesser funding than the Golden Goose brands of British Leyland like the MG. Inevitably, sales declined massively, and production completely ceased in 1984.
I can hear a police siren. The great Austin Morris range, all with super cover and some still available at pre-increased prices.
The Austin brand was arguably one of the most successful British vehicles of the 20th century. Founded by Herbert Austin in 1905, it quickly expanded and established itself in the 20s and 30s as a reliable and affordable option, popularizing car ownership in Great Britain. The A40, A50, and A90 were some of the most popular models gaining entry into the international market. Faced with heavy competition from American manufacturers, Austin decided to form mergers to boost market share and secure financing. This led to the formation of the British Leyland Motor Corporation. And since Austin was only one of several brands, the brand competed for internal resources as Leyland was focused on streamlining production by reducing the number of models offered. With a massive reduction in budget came quality issues, which created instability and led to government intervention, as well as the takeover of the company in 1975. Under the control of the British government, the Austin brand began to phase out, and by 1987 it was discontinued as all of its previous models were rebranded under the name of Rover. So if you've ever seen a Rover Metro, you know it's really an Austin.
Here is the revolutionary Morris Mini Minor. The engine is mounted across the car.
The Morris automobile brand has a similar fate to the Austin. The highly influential British automobile brand was created in the early 20th century by William Morris. Morris was an affordable and practical vehicle option built for consumers who wanted a taste of luxury in the most simple form. Some of the most notable models were the Minor and the Oxford, and things took a different turn in 1952 when Morris Motors merged with Austin to form the BMC, or British Motor Corporation. This merger would blur the lines between the Morris version and the Austin version of the same vehicle, and therefore there was an internal competition between both brands. In 1968, BMC merged with British Leyland, which also had its own subsidiaries like Jaguar, Triumph, Rover, and Leyland. The merger was supposed to build a stronger brand, but instead it created chaos, especially with those brands that overlap models. The Morris brand phased out in the 70s when British Leyland started streamlining operations, focusing on top-selling brands and models, and it was finally discontinued in 1984, but remains a significant part of the automotive industry. The Rover is a UK-based automobile company that came into the automotive spotlight in 1878, known for its tough off-road vehicles, with the most prominent model being the Land Rover. Due to financial difficulties, BMW acquired Rover in 1994 with the aim of investing in new models. However, they faced irrevocable financial loss due to poor performance, and after a series of ownership changes, failed partnerships, and massive decline in sales, the Rover was discontinued in 2005. Which of these car brands have you seen recently? Be sure to let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss out on a future video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.